Hi, I'm Ceci Sparrow from the front line, and I'm here with my good friend Krystal-Elaine. And Krystal-Elaine is going to share with me her story or two about her mom. And I'm going to give a little bit of backstory to explain why I want to hear about the stories about her mom. We spoke about your mom, how she was a foster mom, and how protective you are of the love you have for your mom and how she is your mom. And you want her to be only your mom, like as if you were the only child. I believe you have a brother, right?
The
And you
fact that
have
you have to
this.
say, I believe you have a brother. Yes, I have a brother. Yeah.
And why I love that is because people may not know, I actually was a foster mom. My foster baby is now my adopted daughter, although you can't tell because she shares the same qualities as Krystal-Elaine. I'm her mom. She is, for all intents and purposes, when my oldest is out of the room or not around, she is an only child. And I am her mom. I'm absolutely her mom. I have absolutely been her mom from the moment she arrived. And in listening to Krystal-Elaine talk about how protective she is and how fixated she was or has been on her mom, got me to understand my baby a little bit more because I've always looked at it like, oh Lord, this child. Whew. And now understanding it from your perspective, how you as the child in that situation, how it was all love and how you just wanted to be around her. And I'm going to let you talk. It's the thing that really got me was how you said you always wanted to be in your mom's orbit. You always wanted to be right next to her.
I feel like she is watching me right now. But I would like to preface that I didn't know how possessive or fixated I was until you pointed it out. I was just talking about her, and these are things that you helped me to realize. But yes, I do want to say that.
Yeah. And what I love about it, I love that the love you have for your mom protects her memory and her legacy. You know, even though I know you told me the story about her taking the kids from the neighborhood and the foster kids out for ice cream, and you were walking home that time. I look at your face.
Makes me mad every time. I don't know how to, like, I come home from school the same time every day. So I don't understand why I wasn't in this equation, you know? So I'm coming home from school, and my mom had a van because she had foster kids. But, good old fashioned, like late 80s, early 90s van is like an aubergine purple mauve mix with the stripes. Yeah, and you get the cassette tape intro when you buy it. So it has these songs like Danger Zone on it, like you're like a motorcycle, but whatever, they want you to feel good about your purchase. But we kept that cassette. We played it all the time in our van. But the van was on the street parked. We have a driveway. See, I'm from the South. Unlike here, right now I live in the Pacific Northwest, and on the West Coast, people aren't, I guess, used to having parking space, but I'm from the South. Parking is readily available. It's never an issue. We have a long driveway, and we had, like a fourth of acreage. So parking was never an issue. So there's no reason my mom's car should have been idle out front. But it was, and she was in it, and I kept walking, and I saw, like, you could see shadows of people's heads in the van, and I get, like, it started moving, and then I'm just on the sidewalk, luckily close enough, so I'm like, hey, and she, right when it started moving, she stopped, and she rolled down the window. So, hey, baby. And I could see these heads of people in the van. I'm like, what's going on? It's like, oh, we're going to get ice cream. And I'm just silent because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I'm her child. I'm her child. My brother was living with my dad at the moment. So I am the only child. What is this? We're going to get ice cream. And I am not informed. I'm not the first person in the car. Well, who are these people in the car? And then she looks at, I guess, my stupor, my face. She used to always tell me because I'm not a person that could really hide my facial expressions. And so she used to say, fix your face. But I guess she could see, she looked at him. She's like, oh, you want some? And there's another. What kind of question is that? I was, like 12 or something? Yes, this 12-year-old, your daughter, would like some ice cream.
Yeah.
And then, so she was like, come on in. Like, like I'm a guest. So I get in. And so someone has to move out of the front seat. Why are you in the front seat? You don't go here. And then, so I get in and I look back and I can see them all dug back because they knew. They knew. All these neighborhood kids in this van. Yeah, that still makes me hot to this day. I cannot. She was so happy. She was just so oblivious. We're going to get ice cream. You want to come?
That's it's part of her heart. She was sharing her love of children, I remember another story you told me.
Look, she was petite. Her heart was petiter, okay? She ain't got enough heart to share all these mofos in that van.
You talked about it was more than just your love of her. It was just tell us about why you needed to be in her orbit and why you were so drawn to her.
But I always felt that I was supposed to be with her. So she was my home. Mm-hmm. So being around her was my neutral or natural position. So it was odd that I was not with her. They used to even say that as soon as she left the room when I was a baby, I'll just start crying. No matter who was around, even my dad. My dad would go to pick me up, I'll cry louder. And so she actually had to do chores for a while with just having me propped up on her hips. That's the only way I'd be quiet. I even though, people would tell that story, like, can you believe how you were? And I still am like, yeah, and I still don't understand. Like, yeah, I don't know really how to explain it, but that she was my home. People always talk about a place. For me, I guess it was a person. My mom moved around a lot. She was always very proactive in life, which I really admire. So if she saw something she thought was wrong, she would try to fix it. She saw someone who needed help, she would try to help them. If she needed to get something done, but she didn't know how to do it, she would try to figure out how to do it. If there was a better job in another state, to where that she could provide for us better, then she would move. So we moved a lot. And I didn't have a problem with that too much, somewhat. As you get older, for me especially, it's hard to make and break friends, kind of thing. But as long as I guess her shadow, that's where I was comfortable. I guess that could be a good way of explaining it. If I was her shadow, I was covered in her presence, then I was fine. I knew everything was going to be okay. And I know a lot. I know now, especially because she was a foster parent. So I have a very realistic understanding about the different families, quote unquote, that exist out there and how children are treated. So I definitely know now that it was not, unfortunately, it was not typical to have a mother or relationship that I can talk to about in this way, but I always felt safe. Even when, and she believed in corporal punishment. She was very heavy-handed physically, and she's very old school with her 4'11" frame. I said she was petite. She was. So that depending on what you believe about discipline, that is good or bad. But even when she was upset and during those very hard moments of discipline and whatever, I always felt, later on, I got over it, and where would I want to be beside my mom?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I do know that it may not be typical, but it's just how I viewed her, that I was a part of her. No matter where I went, I'm very used to traveling, and that's probably, in hindsight, because we move so much, conditioned that way. But I always traveled with her, and she let me know a long time ago, me and my brother, because we always would take road trips. She believed that you never knew a city until you got lost in a city. So whenever we would go to a new place, he would just drive around, because that was the best way for her to start to learn the city. She didn't want a map. She didn't want to be told where to go, because then she wouldn't know what was around the other corner. So she would literally just go wandering in her car around the city. And I remember one time she let me know that she always wished she wanted to be a truck driver when she graduated high school, but that was very frowned upon for a woman in her generation, a Black woman, in a semi, just roaming around. But she thought that life sounded amazing. That's all she wanted to do, was just drive around and travel. So, even up until the time she died, I remember growing up, and she would just randomly wake us up middle of the night. It'd be like 3 a.m. Hey, I want to go to Georgia. All right. So we pack up our stuff. Excuse me. Still to this day, I know how to pack a bag. If you say you going on a trip, you want to go, I'm good. I know how to pack for that. So we pack up a bag real quick. She leaves a message that gets us out of school the next day. And we go to Georgia, stay at a hotel, drive around, get lost, go back home.
Wow. There's a freedom that's almost unheard of, in terms of her being a mom, especially, a Black mom, a freedom in just picking up and feeling confident enough to just pick up and go and explore. There's a bravery in that. My grandmother had similar traits, but once she got to a certain age, she kind of did a lot less of that. I get it. I get that your mom had that travel bug and she was just brave enough to follow it. And what an experience for you guys. How did you guys feel during that time? Were you just as curious as she was?
It was just so normal. I mean, I guess, yes. But it was just normal.
Yeah.
I know, now it wasn't so normal, but for us, it was just normal. We're just on the road. She was always driving around. And so us sitting in the back seat, cutting up was normal. So this was just, and also she, I am from the South. I'm from North Carolina, but a family all over the Deep South. And Cadillacs were a thing, especially back then. But for two little kids, Cadillacs, that's a bed. That it's not like we were cramped for space. I even remember for some reason, in some way, I got used to actually sleeping on the floorboard. I found that comfortable. Especially when we got the van, because it was the old van where you have your two front seats, then you have two seats kind of parallel behind it with the space that people could walk through to the back bench seat. So in that space that people could walk is where I would always insist on being, and that I made a pallet. Like when we did large road trips with the other kids, when she had a foster home, and I brought a pillow, I had my book, so I was just riding along in the bed. I loved that area. So I got used to sleeping in this. I was just very used to, I guess, being in a vehicle. And till this day, as soon as I get in the car, I can fall asleep like that. And everyone calls me a big ass baby. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. Everyone calls me a baby because they could just put me to sleep. I just ride in the car.
Yeah.
It's just, and I don't know, just that also was a feeling of safety because I was usually, passenger seat. My mom was driving, and my mom was an excellent driver. She didn't enough, but I preferred riding with her in a vehicle than my dad, and he was a professional mechanic for 40 years, restored cars, learned how to do defensive driving technically, it's just all kind of stuff. But I wanted to ride with my mom. For me, she was the driver.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw a lot of different states in the Southeast. And so we also talked how I from high school on, I traveled a lot internationally, and I never knew that was odd until other people, like I went, was it Thanksgiving or something? So this was like during college, my undergrad, and I was at home visiting my dad's side of the family. I have a lot of cousins. At this point in time, I've been over, several countries in Europe, and I had just gotten back from my second time spending the summer in China, mainland China. And my cousin just came up to me with all sincerity, just asking, how did you get the courage to go? And I was so shocked by the question. I just never thought that I couldn't. For me, it wasn't something insurmountable or something that even began to have. There were no speed bumps. There were no reasons to question why I could not go to China. There was nothing in me ever came in my mind of why I could not go to France or the UK or Portugal. There was never that question. I just did not grow up with those limitations put in me. And I think that's largely because of my mom and the way that she was always traveling, and we talked about different places, and there were never those kind of limits in my childhood. And also I was always an avid reader, which she of course loved. She was not, but she loved that I was. She loved that she could just drop me off at a library and I would have the best day of my life. She didn't have to do anything. Her and my dad were actually very stereotypical alpha male and females of the school. She was the track star. He was the football star. His trophies are still at the at the high school to this day. And I've heard, of some instances of bullying that my mom may have partaken. She was the popular girl in high school. It's a very different, that rocked my world when I found that out. Because she comes off very different to me, but she loved the fact that I was not that. I was very much the nerdy girl who loved books, and she thought I was so smart, and she loved that image of me. True or not, but yeah, she always loved that I loved books. And so just, like Reading Rainbow tells us, I can go anywhere. I never grew up, nothing that I consumed from what I did in school or what I was reading, fantasizing about, exploring, and nothing I was hearing from my mom ever put limitations on what I could do as far as travel or explore in life. So I do think that was very beneficial for me as far as where I could go or traveling.
But do you think that without your mom's influence in terms of her just wanting to pick up and explore, do you feel that influenced you in your desire to want to explore and to push past boundaries and to really, live an unusual life? Like, it's very unusual for a Black girl from the South to be fluently speaking Chinese and to have explored, and traveled the way that you did. Do you think that your mom's influence had a lot to do with that?
Sure. For the fact of, I honestly did not feel it was a boundary. It never occurred to me. Just like the only hindrance to me learning Chinese was my pride in not wanting to listen to my friend. All this other things like, oh, I'm the only Black person, and I was, or all this other stuff did not even come to my mind until I was there, to be honest. And I had to confront being a Black person in China, and those things. But it was never a forethought or something that limited my thought, that made me question what I was interested in. It was just what I was interested in. And when I would go home or when I would talk to my mom on the phone, I never got a why. I never got any pushback or any questioning on her part. She would just be like, oh, okay. That's what I would get. And so the fact that was my feedback and acceptance, and her reaction to it was, of course, normal. And that attitude made it okay. As opposed to my dad. I remember, so I ended up studying abroad in China maybe 5 times, something like that. I remember after the second time, my dad, he has a way of saying things that always gets in my crawl, as we like to say. But he used to say, why don't you ever want to go to Africa? Why you always want to go to be with them Asians? What if, they said that you had an opportunity, that there was a scholarship to go to a country in Africa? What would you do? I'm like, I would go. It's like his mentality was so different from my mom's mentality, and I was very glad that I was raised primarily with my mom. I love my dad. We just come to things very differently. Even when I was after college, I was struggling to really get a foothold in my career, and I had to take a lot of shitty jobs. We all have to do them. I feel most of us, not everyone. But I had to make ends work. And I was always trying. I was willing to be the grunt if it meant working towards something I wanted or working within a company I wanted. Then to have, I guess, a better paying job doing something I hated. And that definitely comes from my mom. Absolutely. Because I didn't grow up with someone living that life. She would always try her hardest to do something she believed in, even in the worst of times. Of course, we all had to do things that we didn't like. But that always seemed to be a temporary thing. She was always aiming for something else. And he was like, I just want you. So while I was struggling, he would always say things of, you just need to get a job, stay at the job, get married, and get a house. That's what success was. And my mom, growing up with her, it was always, oh, what do you want to do, baby? Oh, you're so good at this. Should you consider this? Oh, when it came to applying for college, like, oh, you can. She always said I could sign up for anything I wanted, apply for anything I wanted. Just make her a promise to have to get a minor in business. She's like, do whatever you want to do as long as you get a minor in business, because you'll have skills, so you can always have a job if you know some business skills. And so you can always do what you want to do, and maybe you have a part-time job as a secretary or something like that. So it was just, I was very glad I spent most of my life with her kinds of reactions and influence than his. And I think his is just very generational. And I also think there's ideas of masculinity in that. There's other things impacted in that. And also my parents had me much older than they had, than people of their generation. So even still, they were of an older generation. And I think that had a lot to do with it. And a lot of us back then, you do what you can to survive. And sometimes it's hard to think past surviving. My mom was always thinking past surviving. So there's that.
Yeah. Was that the best advice your mom gave you in terms of making sure that you minored in business?
No.
No.
I think it was smart. Oh, shrinkage. So when you can see yourself, you see the shrinkage. It is.
Your hair looks amazing. I love it. I love the color too.
Well, I mean, it comes down here, but you never know. Anyway. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it was great advice, and it's something, if I am lucky enough to have kids or foster kids, whomever, or mentor people, is something I would also tell them. I, just like her, also believe in trade schools. Highly undervalued. I think there are a lot of good jobs, and I think success is not dependent on a 4-year degree, and I think it's also not prescribed to this has so many thoughts as an anthropologist, but culturally, this prescribed coercion of marriage, house, and one job for life that is very much a fallacy. I don't believe in it, as you can tell. There's just so many ways of being successful. I believe that you need to be responsible. Right? That doesn't necessarily mean there's only one way to be successful. And so that's where my dad and I diverge in thought. And so I think it's responsible for you being able to take you as we grow. Adulting to me means being able to take care of myself and those that depend on me. And so learning basic business skills and having those classes under my belt absolutely allowed me to do that more effectively. And I think learning how to cook a little bit and learning how to sew a little bit are also things that help with that. But the best advice my mom gave me was, it was supposed to be dating advice, but for me, it's just life advice for people. But she told me, one night we're just sitting at our table, and she said, never trust when you're with a guy, see how he treats the waiter. A guy should treat the waiter just as well as they would treat the manager. And that tells you everything. And in a different conversation, she said something similar, but she was talking about working at a company. And she said, when you're at a company, watch how they treat the staff. How do they treat the janitors? The companies are ran by the secretaries and the janitors. And how they treat them is going to tell you everything you need to know about the company. Mm-hmm. So those, I think they're the same sentiment, but they tell me almost everything I need to know about people. How we treat each other depending on what job, or what we prescribe to people, or class. The fact that if you do treat a person differently, depending on what you believe your status is, or what you believe their status is, or your idea of status or difference, if you perceive a difference, that's a problem with me. And that's going to absolutely arm me in being able to compartmentalize my relationship with you and how I address you and what information about myself I tell to you. That's definitely going to help guide me, your actions. I'm not telling you how to treat a person. I'm watching and observing how you treat those people. And that's going to tell me a lot. And that has helped me more than anything else. And I even have it on my dating profiles. And I know for a fact is put off people. But I put I want a guy who will treat the waiter just as well as he'll treat the manager. That's one of my first lines. And if that offends you, then you ain't the one. I don't need you in my life. So let's just cut it out now. You go on your way, I go on my way. But if it does offend you, I would be interested in understanding why. The anthropologist side of me wants to be nosy. But yeah, I don't need that in my life.
Yeah. None of us do. None of us do. Thank you so much for this lovely chat. I always enjoy our chats. I think we need to have more chats.
Yeah.